You are listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. Each week, your host, Polly ReQua, interviews veterinarians from across the nation, answering your questions about your pet. Bark and Wag's podcast is produced every Monday for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at www.barkandwag.com under the podcast tab.
I'm your host, Polly ReQua, and today we're talking to one of our favorite vets, Dr. Susan McMillan, owner of Pet Mobile Veterinary Service in Burlington, Vermont. Today we'll be discussing annual exams for your pooch. Susan, thanks for agreeing to discuss what to expect when taking your dog to the vet.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this topic up because I think it's really overlooked in how important it is. I think we all think about taking your dog or cat in for their shot. That's the way we've always looked at it, but there's so much more to it. So I'm glad that you and I are going to be talking about it tonight.
Oh, good. So, what's the, kind of walk us through, we've discussed, how to find a vet. So now once we've decided to visit with a vet, what happens on the back end as well as when I walk into the front door of your vet clinic?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think on the back end, what your vet will probably do is either ahead of time or maybe when you come in, whether you just rescued him and maybe you just have one sheet of paper that says what vaccines he's gotten or that he just got spayed or neutered, or maybe you have a big thick history because you've had your vet for 10 or your pet for 10 years, but you want to bring all of that with you because hopefully your vet's going to want to look at it so that he or she can know as much about your animal as possible ahead of time.
Okay. And so, one thing that I've noticed that our vet does is that they now have a portal website where you can go in and view all of your pet documents. Is that something that you have as well?
We don't have that at our clinic, but it's definitely kind of the wave of the future. I still do things a little bit the old-fashioned way as far as just getting my hands on whatever records I can. But the important part is that your vet have all of that information.
Okay.
Too many people show up and they just say, yeah, he's up to date on his shots, and but we would rather have all the details. So I just recommend people bring in whatever they have, and then once you get to the visit, I'm glad we're talking about that too, because there should be several components to that annual exam visit. So I'll just walk right through it, if that's okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So at least when I do it, I ask owners a lot of questions, and every once in a while people kind of look at me funny, like I'm almost interrogating them, but it's totally so that I can get a picture of this animal's life, because I don't know anything about it. So I want to ask, what kind of food do they get fed? And your best answer isn't just, oh, he gets really good dry food, or she gets really good cheap canned food, whatever. The details are great. Hopefully your vet asks you, what brand of food? How much do you feed? Is it canned or dry? What kind of treats? The more information you can give, the better. And hopefully your vet actually wants to hear that and incorporate it into your pet's medical record, because ultimately it may matter someday. That kind of history may really help solve a problem, whether it's an overweight problem or a diabetes or an allergy problem. So that history, all those questions matter. Diet, I always ask pets, or I ask their owners. I don't ask the pet, but I ask the owner, is there any vomiting? Is there any soft stools? Is there any itchiness? Behavioral problems, coughing, sneezing. You really want to try to spend a lot of time talking, and it may seem like And as an owner, you may feel like you're wasting your time. Like all they're doing is asking me a bunch of questions, but a really thorough history can really make a huge difference to a pet. And then you move on to the physical exam.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that can also feel kind of overlooked. Sometimes I think as vets, we either fly through the physical exam or we do it while we're talking, and maybe the owner doesn't even realize, wow, he was actually just checking my pet's lymph nodes and he was actually doing all kinds of things. And I thought it just looked like he was petting them or not doing much. But a good physical exam should really go from tip of the nose to tip of the tail. Some vets walk their way through it so that you realize what they're looking at.
Okay.
How does your vet do it, Polly? Do they talk you through it or just
Yeah,
kinda...
they talk you through it, and then we actually were on vacation last week and we brought Chuck the pug.
I know Chuck was in Colorado.
And Chuck ended up going to the Frisco Animal Hospital with an ear infection.
Oh.
And the vet there was very, very thorough, just like what you said. And as he was talking to me about the ears and Chuck's nose and his teeth, he was doing he was doing an exam. So I've seen it done, both
Good.
ways. But a lot of times when, like, I have to take the dogs each year for their annual exam, and then the doctor will walk through it. If it's an emergency or, like a kind of what happened with this
focused.
Yeah, then it's a little bit different.
Yeah, sometimes, maybe we should, we really should do a complete physical every time, but sometimes, especially if you've seen an animal many times during the year, sometimes I admit we do maybe bypass some things and go right to the ears, focus on that, do a real hardcore press on that. But otherwise, for the annual, it should go oral exam, and everyone has their own order, but they should do a good oral exam. They should check the animal's eyes, look in both ears with the otoscope, listen to the heart and lungs on both sides of the animal's chest.
Mm-hmm.
Some vets will also check the femoral pulses, which is back kind of in the groin, while also listening to the heart. And then you want to palpate the abdomen really well. And every animal tolerates these things one way or another. I mean, some better, some worse. Some animals, you don't do a very good oral exam. Maybe the animal has a muzzle on.
Oh, goodness.
Or maybe they don't really they're okay, but don't put that otoscope in my ear. So, I mean, honestly, you do the best you can without causing a tremendous amount of stress to the animal. And you evaluate their lymph nodes, and then I always use a flea comb and evaluate the skin, the coat, and look for any sign of fleas or ticks or parasites. So a good physical exam should really take you from tip to tail and take a few minutes while you're talking your way through it.
I have one question.
Yeah.
A vet a long time ago told me when I think it was our golden retriever Whiskey was getting a shot to rub her ears.
Yeah.
Is that more of for a distraction, or is that?
I always think the distraction.
Okay.
Because at the end of the physical exam, any vaccines that your pet might be due for, that's probably one of the more traumatic parts of the exam. And if the animal's food motivated, you can feed them treats while you're doing it,
Mm-hmm.
which sure Whiskey was also.
Yeah.
And the thing is about food is I don't understand with little kids, the kind of scenario is you give a kid a pops or a little lollipop after she's gotten her shots. It's like, why don't you do it while she's getting them? So that's what we try to do at the vet clinic is feed them treats while they're getting it, especially puppies and kittens, but all along the way, because if you can distract them so they don't even realize you're doing it, then that's awesome. You're done. Other animals don't fall for that, and they require either a little bit more restraint or distraction, or, there's all kinds of tricks out there. But yeah, you want to hopefully make it maybe even a good experience, but at least not an awful experience, so that these guys are not so afraid of coming to the vet every year.
Sure. Okay. Great.
And I think one thing we've kind of been focusing on these guys, well, I have been in my head, almost as if they're all young, but especially as they get older, your vet may ask you questions that might seem, I don't know, almost intrusive or silly, but things like, is he or she drinking more? Is he peeing more? Is he having accidents in the house? Is he having any behavioral issues? Is he showing signs of aging? Can he still go up and down stairs? All kinds of things like that can lead your vet to maybe help you deal with either aging or possibly early signs of some chronic diseases. Some people, when you ask them questions, sometimes the answer I get is just, no, he's healthy. He's fine. No, he's healthy. Like I don't want to go through this litany of questions, partly because I don't want you finding anything wrong in this dog I love so much, or in this cat that I love so much. So some of it is just like denial, but us as owners denying we have a problem doesn't change that there may be the beginning of some illness. And there's a lot of illnesses out there that we can manage, we can help with. We don't change the course of aging. And I think you and I should probably have a whole discussion on aging, but when your vet is asking you questions, just remember that they're just trying to look for the first signs of a problem that maybe we can have an impact on and change the course of your pet's life.
Great.
So,
well, thank you very much for talking to us today about, annual exams for your pet. We certainly appreciate your time. And as we begin this podcast, I certainly appreciate all of your help.
Well, it's always fun to do. And one last thing I'd like to just remind anyone is that even if your pet is not due for a rabies vaccine or a distemper or leukemia or any vaccine, think really twice before you skip that annual exam just because your pet is healthy. Maybe it's $50, whatever, $60, whatever, for just that consult. It's really worth going in and just having a second pair of eyes, a second pair of hands on your pet. And you may learn something, you may find some new thing, and it may totally make your pet healthier. So I think it's worth the visit.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our listeners. And until next week, we will talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, www.barkandwag.com, to your friends and other pet owners. Have a pressing question for a veterinarian? Ask your question at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. This has been a KFR production. Join us next time for another edition of Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk.